On this channel, I'm always talking about combining multiple different forms of training because I genuinely believe that that's the best way to get the most comprehensive fitness and performance profile. I don't think that any one modality can offer everything you need to perform your very best. One of the criticisms I sometimes get about this though is that it's a bit overwhelming. Where do you even begin when you have such a smorgasbord to choose from? Kettlebell training, bodybuilding, powerlifting, calisthenics, mobility, long distance running, martial arts, etc. Well, a great place to start for a lot of people would be to take two different forms of training and to combine them. And as it happens, there are many great pairings that go together like great cheeses and wines, where they perfectly complement each other, make up for what's missing, and compound on those benefits. A while back I made a video called Functional Aesthetics where I talked about how beneficial it could be to combine functional training, traditional functional type movements, with bodybuilding training. This way the functional athlete would get some of the isolated hypertrophy that's missing from that kind of training. They could work on the smaller muscle groups that even functional training might overlook. Conversely, the bodybuilder would get some additional aesthetics as well from things like the obliques that aren't traditionally hit by bodybuilding routines. At the same time, they'd learn to combine those different areas of strength into more compound movements and complex movement patterns. They'd build stability, balance, and all that good stuff. Check out that video if you're interested. Today I'm talking about another pairing that's perhaps even more powerful. That's to combine calisthenics with athletic training. So just to reiterate, I'm not saying by any means that this is the very best form of training, this is what I'm going to be doing from now on. This is just one possible combination of many that demonstrates how pairing different workouts, different forms of training can be an excellent approach. And these two really do go together like Starsky and Hutch. So what I'm talking about here? Well, calisthenics, of course, means bodyweight training. I'm talking about push-ups, air squats, sit-ups, etc., pull-ups. However, past a certain point, a true calisthenics athlete needs to move on to more complex movements, more challenging movements. They're going to be doing things like handstand push-ups, planche progressions, front levers, that kind of thing. Meanwhile, by athletic training, I'm talking about the kinds of things that a coach might give to an athlete if they wanted to improve their performance in sports. So we're talking about things like hip thrusts, bounds, sprinting drills. We're talking about depth jumps and box jumps. Perhaps some knees over toes stuff like a deep ATG split squat. We're talking various cable exercises, rotational movements, that kind of thing. Banded lateral walks, bounds, anterior reaches, that kind of stuff. And there's loads of reasons why these things go together like Sonic and Tails. The one thing that both these types of training have in common is they don't want to pack on too much weight, too much mass. An athlete doesn't want to be extremely bulky for the majority of activities because otherwise it's going to slow them down, it's going to get in the way. And whilst you can be powerful and explosive and have a lot of muscle, on the whole this kind of training is going to lead to slower performance. If nothing else, it's going to land you in a higher weight class, which can be detrimental for many different sports. Of course, your calisthenics athletes don't want to pack on too much weight because it's much harder to do a full planche or a one-armed pull-up if you weigh more. So in both scenarios, we want a high strength to weight ratio. This is something they have in common. However, one thing that's missing often from calisthenics training that athletics can offer is leg training. Now, before you come at me and tell me that there's lots of great leg exercises in calisthenics, of course you have things like pistol squats, sissy squats, air squats, squat jumps, lunges, etc. The truth is that in order to really build mass on your legs, it's often a lot easier to add extra weight. And you can build some decent legs, but this isn't something that calisthenics is known for, let's put it that way. And at the same time, legs in particular, if you want to do things like planche, getting them too big and bulky really can be detrimental to your performance. So you do tend to see that calisthenics athletes sometimes have slightly smaller legs in comparison to their upper body. However, this is where athletic training can fit like a glove, because this is going to come in and give you a way to train your legs that isn't focused on building massive bulk, but gives you even more balance, even more stability, explosiveness, running speed. You're going to add power and strength to the legs, but not in the way that's going to lead to massive thunder thighs or going to make you really heavy or going to negatively impact on your mobility. At the same time, this kind of training often uses body weight or just a little bit of extra weight, often about 30% of body weight, which is optimal for increasing explosiveness across many different exercises and studies. This is a perfect way to train legs as a calisthenics athlete that's going to give you this whole extra dimension to your performance, because now you're also running super fast and jumping super high and darting and cutting and changing direction on top of being able to do things like one-arm pull-ups and planche. You're just going to be this athletic performance machine. And adding athletic training to your calisthenics routine is also a great way to get some cardio in or some high intensity interval training, because once again you can just simply combine steady state cardio with calisthenics, or you can just perform high repetition push-ups in a fashion that makes it more like a form of cardio. But I think doing these high intensity interval training, sprints and drags and med ball slams in the fashion that you would do for athletic training is a really good option too. And in a similar manner, something else that's often missing from calisthenics training is rotational strength. I've talked on this channel before about how important rotational strength and power can be. And this isn't just calisthenics, it's missing from so much training, whether it's powerlifting, whether it's bodybuilding. We so rarely twist our bodies in training, even though this is something we do all the time in real life and in sports, whether you're wrestling someone, whether you're pushing or pulling pretty much anything. And even just walking, you rotate your body. When you're throwing, training the serape effect, building powerful hips and a rotational core, this is all absolutely crucial, I think, to overall performance. And it's the perfect example of why picking just one form of training often isn't enough. I like to do kick-throughs, but there's not a ton of option you can do with calisthenics training. However, if you look at the average athletics training program, it often does include lots of stuff for rotation, and not just anti-rotation like you might get from calisthenics, from things like one-armed push-ups, etc., but actually rotating and twisting the body against resistance. Whether it's something like a cable wood chop or even something like a rotational med ball slam. Once again, you're plugging a gap that's missing from calisthenics with something really cool from athletics. So now you might be thinking you can get lots of benefits as a calisthenics athlete by adding athletic style training, but what benefit does the athletic trainee get from adding calisthenics? Well, first of all, calisthenics is fantastic for building an extremely strong core. This is something that already exists in sports training and athletics. However, if you use calisthenics, you're going to build it to a whole extra level. As Stuart McGill says, it's really important to have a powerful core because this allows you to express force and power through your limbs. I always use the analogy of hitting someone with a floppy stick with a nail on the end versus hitting someone with a hard plank of wood with a nail on the end. You're going to transfer more power via the hard plank of wood because it's not leaking energy. And in calisthenics, you're doing all these moves that require an incredibly powerful and stable core. This is one of the reasons why gymnastics is often thought of as one of the activities that has the most transfer to all the other forms of sport and athletics. So this would just be a way for an athlete or someone who's interested in sports to take their performance potentially to the next level. At the same time, athletics training on its own doesn't necessarily offer a lot of hypertrophy and muscle building in a more isolated and traditional sense. You're not just bulking up specific muscle groups because there's not enough isolation in there. Whilst you might do squats and deadlifts, the aim here is not hypertrophy. At the same time, you're not going to be doing lots and lots of curls most likely. However, calisthenics is excellent for building muscle. Whilst you might not pack on the bulk that you might get from bodybuilding or powerlifting, calisthenics can build some of the very best physiques going. Not only because of that really powerful core, but because of the intense work you do on the shoulders and the lats, and because of the fact that you're working with your own body weight, which leads to a really ripped and lean physique. And the other big way in which athletic training can benefit from adding some calisthenics is simply by creating a much more well-rounded athlete. Because athletic training often means training for a particular sport or event, and sometimes this can mean not getting the full package. Becoming too specialist in any one area can be a recipe for imbalances and injuries, and it can lead to problems down the road. Even if you're using a more broad athletic style training without necessarily having a particular sport in mind, you might not be doing things like training the biceps in a big way, or the triceps, or the shoulders, or even the lats, because you might rarely be hanging. So by adding calisthenics, you get this far more well-rounded physique that plugs all of those gaps once again, and at the same time isn't going to add lots of bulk and isn't going to slow you down because you're using your own body weight. Both these styles of training are about becoming an absolute master of your body weight. It's just that calisthenics is about defying gravity and controlling movement in space, whereas athletic training is about being explosive, fast, and nimble. And by combining these two things, you can create a truly powerful and well-rounded athlete. And then once you've done that, you can start looking at adding a little bit of kettlebell training, bodybuilding, etc. as well to become even more rounded still. Just to be absolutely clear, it's not like you can't get almost all of these benefits from doing a purely calisthenics-based workout or from doing a purely athletics-based workout. There are plenty of exercises for the legs if you're doing calisthenics, like I've said. It's more just that this gives you a bigger pool to select from, and where there might be a slightly more limited selection in calisthenics, you get a wider selection in athletics, and in many cases, the other way around. And that's why these two mesh together so nicely. If you're looking for a program that combines multiple different styles of training, that includes things from athletic training, from Calisthenics, then of course you can try my ebook and training program, Super Functional Training 2.0, the Protein Performance System. And that also comes with over 2 hours of instructional training videos. That also incorporates things like kettlebell training, mobility work, brain training, all in a systematic fashion that's adaptable to any ability level and nearly any kind of equipment. So I'll put the link to that in the description down below if you're interested. Either way, thank you so much for watching this one, guys. I massively appreciate it. Let me know in the comments down below, do you think that this kind of athletic training plus calisthenics is a good mix? Another big one for me is powerlifting with kettlebell training, and I might talk about that in a future video if this is something that people find interesting. Subscribe if you want to see more like this, hit the bell button for notifications, and like and share it around if you want to. That helps me out massively. And thank you so much for watching this one, guys. Bye for now.